Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Digital Commando show. As you'll notice, I'm not Stefan Wesley. I am Dave Kitchen, and I'm standing in as the guest presenter for Web Wednesday. As usual, if you like the show, if you get value from it, if you're entertained by it, please share it, please pay it forward, please send it to a friend. We've got two great guests for you today on the show for Web Wednesday. We've got Chris Grice and we've got Ben Timberley. I'm going to bring them into the room now and let them introduce themselves. Morning, guys. How are you doing?
Very well.
Very well, thanks.
Yeah.
Good. Right, Ben, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, I'm Ben Timberley. I'm from Black Book Consulting. It's essentially me. I'm self-employed. I work with a network of fellow experts from my little black book that I've accrued over a period of around 20 years. I've got the best of the best in there. Essentially, what I do is I provide sales, marketing, digital infrastructure, and strategic advice to organizations of all kinds and calibers, as well as all sizes, the big ones and the little ones. I do this, from a holistic point of view, as well as actually doing the delivery as well. So I cover the whole lot.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. And Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, so I'm Chris. I run Tree Frog Digital. We are organic search specialists. There's two of us. Essentially, what we do is anything to do with organic search, focusing very heavily on technical SEO. What we've done more recently is started to go into businesses, and we've done the stuff that the technical SEO and the strategy, but actually teaching and mentoring a member of staff within the business to do the day-to-day stuff, because a lot of the things that people pay agencies a lot of money for, they can do themselves. It's just knowing what to do at what time. So that's me. Been doing digital since 1997, which makes me feel very, very old indeed.
23 years, mate.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but back when Ask Jeeves was all the rage. So yeah, I've been doing it for a while, but that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chris. For the viewers, if you have any questions for Chris, Ben, and myself this morning, please fire them in the comments. We'll pop them up on the screen and we'll get the guys to answer them. So our first talking point today is what makes a good website. So I'm going to come over to Chris first. What do you think, Chris? What makes a good website in your opinion?
I think for me, taking the geek speak out of it, the main thing is starting with the end in mind, and making sure that it's not just our website, but an extension of your business plan and your goals. I think when I speak to people about websites, because obviously as SEO we still talk a lot about making sure that things convert once the traffic's driving there. So if you haven't got a business plan and you don't know where you want your business to be in 6 months, 12 months, there's not much point in having a new website. And I think for me, sitting down and understanding what you want the website to do, because it's a tool, actually it asks and answers its own question then. So that for me is the fundamental.
Okay, so yeah, start with the end in mind. Have a purpose, decide what you want it to do, and then make it do it. I think that's really important. There's so many websites out there that are they're very pretty, that they're very aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. They don't actually do anything. They don't help you buy, or they don't help you inquire, or they don't help you get a quote. And they're just essentially useless. So yeah, brilliant points there, Chris. Thank you. Ben, same question to you then. What makes a good website?
I think Chris's answer was absolutely fantastic, and it's nice to hear a fellow professional actually come out with that, because I hear the opposite so often. I think it does come down to the objectives. What are you actually doing? Why are you doing it? I think there's more to it, obviously, from a technical standpoint, but I think the crucial part is having those objectives set out, having a customer journey specced out, so you actually know where they're going to start, where they're going to end. And I think without that sort of viewpoint in mind, a lot of people get websites absolutely wrong. They don't understand that it is a journey. They don't understand that there are touch points. They don't understand that there are ways of harvesting data and taking that data and using it within your wider business. They don't understand that there's a lot of things in terms of content that can be made dynamic, for example, so you can change somebody's journey and where they move to. There's all kinds of different elements of this that add to a really good website. And I think we're going to, if we want to list them all, we're going to be here a very long time. But it does come down to having that strategic mindset. I've actually created a format for speccing this out with my clients that I follow, which is called DSSS, which is diagnose, specify, solve, and sustain. And it's about sort of making sure that people can build that strategy to get to where they want to get to with their clients and whoever it is that visiting their website, and leveraging them properly.
Yeah, fantastic. And the journey thing's very interesting because there's various steps people often go through when they visit a website. And one thing that I see missing quite a lot is the guidance through the next step. So the call to action saying, fill your email address in here, call us on this phone number, click through for a brochure, whatever the next step is, it's got to be guided so that the end user can go, yeah, that's the next bit, and it's obvious. As Chris will know, I ran a taxi company in Chester for a while, and he was one of my customers. Actually, he was very good customer. And the front of the website, it's a very short lead time on booking a taxi. So basically, people land there and they want to book. So there's a book now online button, there's a telephone number, and there's a button to, if you're on your mobile, to put the telephone number in your call app on your phone to call us up. So it's very easy for the customer to do what they need to do next. If they want to scroll around and read about us, that's great. But realistically, on that kind of website, they just want to book a taxi or ring for a price. So that's very important. Right then. Question number 2. So I suspect this is more Chris's speciality. So Chris, do you want to share with us how you would drive traffic to a website, the sort of things you would do?
Okay, well, gosh, how long have we got? Again, I mean, there's always this kind of I don't know, back and forth between which one's better, AdWords, paid search, or using AdWords and paid search, or using organic. And the short answer is yes. Again, coming back to your plan, if you need a lot of sort of leads very, very quickly, or your business is incredibly seasonal, then actually paid search is the way to go, because you can adjust it as the campaign goes along. And the likes of I think it was Argos even changed their AdWords campaign depending on what the weather is. So each day, if the weather's rainy, then actually they'll change the wording in their ads to meet the psychology of what people are feeling when it's raining. So if you're in something that's very, very changeable, AdWords actually works really, really well. Long term. And obviously I've got a little bit of a bias here, but long-term organic search now especially is really, really powerful. If you do it right, and I think if you get out of that mindset that we had 10 years ago of, right, well, I am a plumber in Northwich, so what I need to do is find out about a plumber in Northwich. What we're finding now is that people, where organic search becomes very powerful is things like answering the questions that people have. It's about being an authority in your industry. And also where we have a lot of success is actually finding the gaps that the big competitors aren't utilizing in organic, which so if you're after a long-term strategy, I'd say organic all the way. If you're in a changeable business, paid works really, really well. The only thing I'd say is if you're going to do organic, make sure as well as your standard keyword research, you spend a lot of time looking at your competitors and what they're doing as well, because actually you should be spending, or whoever does your SEO should be spending as much time looking at your competitors' campaign as they are focusing on yours, because that actually then shows you where the weaknesses are. It shows you if you're up against a company and they've been doing this for 14 years, they've got hundreds of thousands of really authoritative links, they're all over their content, then you may as well not, and then you've got another competitor on the other hand who's there because nobody else is, right, well, actually that's going to take you 3 years, but that's really weird with it being a mirror image. That's going to take me in 3 years, and that's going to take me to like 2 weeks. So that'd be my top tip for that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, what you say about keyword research, a lot of people don't start with that, and that's got to be the start point. Find out what your customers are searching for that would lead them to your website in the first place, and that doesn't matter if you're doing SEO organically or whether you're doing a pay-per-click campaign. You need to find out what people are searching for, because just going back to my taxi company, Taxi Chester isn't searched for very much, but Taxi Company Chester is searched for an awful lot. I had no idea about that until I looked at Google's keyword planner.
Yeah, and it's things like your voice search coming into play a lot more now. And again, I could talk about this all day, but with voice search, what we've found is over the last sort of 18 months is that it's changed the psychology of how people use search engines now. Even if you're old school and heaven forbid, like me, you use a keyboard, people are now sort of back to having that conversational, almost relationship with their computer. So I can remember right back in the late 90s, early 2000s, people would write a sentence to a search engine the same as they would in an email. Hello, where is the nearest cinema to me? And actually, we've gone full circle back to that now, where people are doing that. And there are a lot of opportunities within search to make sure that you're picking that up, and things like your featured snippets and all that kind of lovely stuff as well. So it's not just the search link listings. There's so much more to it now. Yeah. And again, coming back to that plan is really an understanding things like the sort of psychometric profile of who you're trying to get really helps you to know which approach is going to be best.
Yeah, good. The voice search stuff's interesting. I've got an Amazon device that I purchased this week. I'm not going to say a name because she'll start doing things, and we don't want that. But the way you talk to that device as compared to how you type into a search engine, for example, is very, very different. And that's very interesting, actually. I hadn't even thought of that in terms of keyword research. That's a great point, Chris. Yeah, very interesting. Right, Ben, talk to me. How do you drive traffic to a website? What are your sort of thoughts and ideas?
Wow. I think Chris has absolutely nailed some really valid points there. I think I'd add to it that I believe that every strategic management team in any organization, sorry, my device is falling down on me. Any strategic management team in any organization should have somebody in that crew that understands and participates in SEO and keyword research. I use a tool called Mangles. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Fantastic piece of kit, just like SEMrush and various others. And I use that to do my keyword research before I start any kind of consulting project with anyone. And the reason being is because if they do not understand the parlance and the language and the motivations for why people are actually engaging with their product or with their competitors' product or with their industry, they can't understand their industry. It's that simple. The internet is essentially a download of people's brains, of the psychology they use, of the language they use, of the motivations they have, and the way in which they access that product or service. And I think it's absolutely crucial that people at top level decision-making levels, they understand this stuff. And I think once they understand that, they can build systems in play that leverage those that language, that psychology, that those routes to market, and they can actually drive traffic to anything, whether it's an app, whether it's social media, whether it's a website, whether it's events or in-store presence. All of these things can be leveraged by having that key phrase research and the knowledge that it provides at the top level of an organization. In terms of actually driving the traffic, prefer to try and take a holistic approach. So I always say to people, don't use one tool. Use several tools. So whether it's social, whether it's PPC, whether it's SEO, that sort of thing. Using the whole gamut is absolutely the best way, in my view. I think the two top issues at the moment in terms of organic traffic accrual, especially organic, is site speed. The amount of websites out there that are incredibly slow is unreal, and Google have recently tightened their standards. So if you do a site speed test using Google Site Speed tool on any websites these days, you'll see a whole bunch of red. There's very few sites that are green, and I don't know whether that's an indictment on web developing as an industry, or whether it's the fact that the standards are so high now, especially for mobile devices. I'm not sure, but the simple truth is that most websites are incredibly slow, especially when it comes to mobile deployment. For example, just having one single big image on your website, and especially slider functionality, especially if it's JavaScript, that sort of thing, is a nightmare, because it just slows websites down hugely. And I'm recommending to clients these days that if they can avoid using sliders, to do so, mainly because most traffic to websites now, and this is still a revelation to most people, comes from mobile devices. You look at the share, and it's generally around 70-30 now in terms of in favoring mobile devices, and yet still most people are building websites to favor desktop devices. It's bonkers, and I don't know why there isn't more communication around this fact. That being said, with sites being one issue, I think the other side of it as well is the technical capability of a site to actually communicate with the internet that's reading it. There are loads of sites that are deploying assets and functionality on the site that isn't compatible with browsers. It's not compatible with users. Most people just want a really simple, easy to access, quick loading, communicative site, and a lot of the time they don't get it. And it's amazing to see some of the biggest players in the world making this mistake still. The level of knowledge on this out there is shocking, and for people like Chris and myself, it's great, because it means we have a ready supply of customers who can come along and give us money to fix it. But at the same time, it's sad to watch the levels of disinformation and lack of knowledge that's out there on this, because it really scuppers a lot of people's business because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things you've said there are very, very interesting. The point about site speed is one that I make just from a personal user point of view. If I click through to a website and it doesn't load to a point where I can use it quickly, I just click off it. I go somewhere else, because at the end of the day, as a user, you want to get whatever you came for. Whether it's the phone number, whether it's to look at the brochure, whether it's to make an inquiry, whether it's to get a price, you want to be able to get what you came for. And if the site takes forever to load, you'll just go to the next competitor who has got a fast loading site. And I like your point about sliders as well. And that's just going back to what we said at the start about pretty versus functional. Sliders look beautiful, and they're great when you sat at home plugged into a 200 megabit LAN connection. But the minute you're out on a mobile phone with a shonky 4G signal that doesn't quite work, they're just an absolute nightmare. And that's the usability aspect is something a lot of people don't even think about. So that's very important. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ben. We've had a question come in from Sarah Gibson. Sarah asks, what do you think is the most important thing to do to improve SEO? So I'm going to say, give us one tip to kind of overcome a mistake people make. Ben, do you want to go first on this one? Yeah,
I'm going to take it back to basics with this. I think and I'll reiterate the point I made before, it comes down to your research, your key phrase research. If you haven't done that wholly and completely and with an open mind, and you haven't used your thesaurus in terms of understanding what people might refer to things as, the 3-letter acronyms, the 4-letter acronyms, the competitors' product names, the different sort of cultural names and usages, phrases. If you haven't done that research fully and completely, you are going to be missing out on some absolutely golden open goals. I did a gig the other day where the top ranking key phrase was amongst the lowest competition key phrases. I've never seen that before, ever. And I just couldn't believe it. And it showed the immaturity of that particular industry, that the top ranking key phrase was just being ignored by most of the players in it. I've never seen that before. So it shows that these golden opportunities where you can get a massive win in terms of improving your SEO, they are out there. You've just got to find them and do really, really good key phrase research.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that Stefan, that normally hosts the show, my boss, talks about, is data-driven marketing. Look at the numbers and then use those numbers to your advantage. Chris, what have you got? One tip for SEO.
Well, I'm going to take it on the sort of flip side of what you said and talk about sort of technical SEO and making sure that the site is crawlable. So often we will get a site that has either been rebuilt and deployed poorly, or looks fabulous, but there's a piece of code missing that means Google's actually disregarding most of the content on their site, and they're actually investing internally. Oh, we need to do more content, then we need to do more content, we need to do more on-page optimization, but actually Google's just completely disregarding it because it's not crawling properly. And this is where tools like your SEMrush sometimes can give a bit of a false positive, because they are simulating Google. So people will put a lot of faith in and these tools are great, I'm not dissing them at all, but they'll put a lot of faith in those tools and tend to not read things like I almost said webmaster tools now, things like Search Console. So get into your Search Console, make sure that your site is crawling correctly, because otherwise, if you've not got that foundation to build on, everything else is an exercise in futility. We had a customer once. He'd had a new website built, very, very shiny, looked great, and they'd done a good job, but he completely dropped off the Google rankings, even for its namesake searches and everything. And he'd had people give him quotes. Oh, you need to do more content. Oh, you need to sign up to a £2,000 a month retainer, X, Y, and Z, which is great. And what it actually came down to is there was a semicolon missing off a file called htaccess, which tells Google what it can and can't. And literally one semicolon. And
yeah,
it was a new. I said, I think I know what this is. I said, it's going to take, if I'm right, it's going to take me about 10 minutes. And it was that they'd written a custom piece of code in the htaccess, and then they'd let Mr. htaccess or robots.txt, I can't remember which one it was now, that they'd edited. But yeah, they'd missed a semicolon off the end, and that had completely killed them. Put it back on, and actually 3 or 4 days later, everything was back to normal. So it just proves that although, yes, SEO is about content, it's all these factors intertwined, but make sure that before you start doing all this, then the sort of proactive stuff, that you've got a really good foundation to build on.
Yeah, that's great. It's just, I guess, that Google is kind of like the shop front, really, in that if you ran say McDonald's, and you went and moved all your McDonald's stores and didn't put any branding on the outside, so nobody knew where they are, how would anybody find them? It would just be pot luck, and very few people would get there. You know where McDonald's is because it's in the location it's always been, and it's got the great big yellow arches outside. And if you're not technically found by Google, you just disappear. And as I'm sure you've said this to me in the past, Chris, the best place to hide a dead body is page 2 of Google. Fantastic. So moving on to number 3, talking point 3 for the day. What are the things to avoid in website design and development? So I'm going to come to Chris first. What would you say the things are that you see that should be avoided?
quite a few of these things that I've got written down throughout the show. But I think for me, the thing that I think you should avoid most is, again, building for desktops. Everything now should be mobile first. Even Google is mobile first. And yeah, still often I see people who've invested serious money into a website, and the agencies or whoever's designed it in-house or whoever has come to them with a lovely 27-inch Mac screenshot of what the website's gonna look like. So yeah, whenever you're doing anything for your site, that's secondary. Mobile first is the way to go, so that when you've got somebody who's got a contact form and sausage fingers like me, they can still fill it in and buy from you. So.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing worse than landing on a site on your mobile phone and having to pinch to zoom, or the content hanging off the side of the screen, or and you see it so often. And it in about 2007, it was probably okay because smartphones were barely a thing. But now everybody's got one. Everybody uses it. I can't remember the last time I ordered from Amazon using my PC. I just do it on the phone, scroll through and buy, and it's because it's not a nice experience. They've gone mobile first. So yeah, completely agree.
Just one other thing, sorry, is and this is not really a technical thing, it's not really a design thing, but make sure you understand who owns your website, what the agreement is. Have you got access to the files, FTP, all that kind of lovely stuff? Because the amount of people we have come across in the past where they'll build a site for them, and then they'll say, "Oh no, you can only use us for your SEO." It's like, but you admit yourself that you're not the best at it. Yes, but you can only use us because we don't want somebody messing with the code on the site, or we don't. So make sure whenever you're having any kind of website built that you go through it with a real fine tooth comb. There's still companies out there that basically sell you a license agreement to the website as well. So this works in the same way as a photographer, where it says that you own the content, but actually what you own is a Word document with the text in it and any images that you've supplied. Everything else belongs to them. It just means that you're at their mercy then. And I'd say probably 4 or 5 times a year we come across businesses who've been stung by this, or people. I mean, we had one where the guy had just had a life in licensing, decided he was going to give up web development and just shut shop, and off he went. And no one could get hold of him. Nobody could get to him to get changes. So it's a real part of your business. And if you come to sell your business, your website is a real part of nowadays of the valuation of that business. So just think of it as a legal thing whenever you go and have a website built.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's a good business tip, full stop, not just a website-based tip, is to understand the terms and conditions of the contract you're entering into and what that means for you, and check that is actually the kind of contract you want to be in. We're all guilty of just scrolling to the bottom of the T's and C's and signing or ticking the box and not actually reading them. And that point, knowing where your domain's hosted, knowing where your website's hosted, having access yourself is very, very important, because if you've not got control of it, as you say, it puts people in a really, really difficult position. It's not a nice place to be, especially when the website is so important to the business. It's a great point, that, Chris. Thank you. Over to you, Ben. What to avoid in website design and development?
Wow. This is a topic that's very close to my heart, and everything you said, Chris, you kind of triggered the desire to have a rant.
Go for it, man, go.
In short, our industry is festooned with charlatans who do this. I call them farmers. Yeah, they don't take on clients, they take on victims, people that they want to lock into a 3, sometimes 5. I've heard of one 10-year contract where they are required to have every bit of support, every bit of hosting, everything from this provider, we shall call them, rather than a pirate or a charlatan or anything like that. And these people go out there and they string along completely innocent, well-meaning customers and clients, and they put them in situations that can destroy their business. Yeah, they can, and in some cases destroy their lives because of the trust that these people have put in these providers. And I have personally had to rescue no end of clients and employers from this situation, where they've had everything you've said, Chris, about people just going, oh, I've had enough now, I'm going to go and do something else. I've encountered that before. I've encountered the the people who resell Wix and other platforms like that, where they go, oh, I'll create your Wix site and everything else like that, and they don't tell them what's involved, and they say, oh, here's your website, and oh, why is it not ranking? Oh, why can I not change anything? And I've even seen people custom coding WordPress frameworks where the customer is locked out. And I'm looking at that and going, you've literally taken an open source, open access platform and locked it out with your client. And the only reason you've done that is to farm them. And for me, it is a point of personal and professional pride. And anybody I find who thinks like me, I hold them closely and dearly, and and treat them nicely, because there's not enough of us that believe in the professional standards that we need to apply in this area. So for me, that is an absolutely crucial point. You have to know what you're getting into, and that comes back to what I think are probably a couple of really important points here. When you build digital infrastructure, which is one of the things I consult on, you have to treat it like you're building a building, or you're building a production line or a factory line. It's you have legal contracts in place, you have a project plan, you have staff whose job it is to interact with certain parts of it and specialize in those areas, or outsource providers which you need a contract with, and a service level agreement, and all these sorts of things. You need to have all of that in place. If you don't treat your digital infrastructure as a key and integral part of your business in 2020, you're doing something badly wrong, and you really need to take a look at what you're doing with your organization. I think in terms of the flip side to that as well, Chris and Dave as well, I'd love to hear your opinions on this. I am a great believer in off the shelf first and custom where you need it. I think there's a lot of people out there who are selling everything must be bespoke. You need a custom coded website with a custom theme and custom backend, custom integrations, and it's literally paying for development time. So you are literally paying somebody else to keep their lights on and their tea and biscuits in their agency office. And it is agencies that do this a lot of the time. They sell their own custom themes, they sell their own custom frameworks, that sort of stuff. And if you leave them, you can't get support from anywhere else. So I view it as a criminal enterprise. I have really strong feelings on this, which is why I always say to people, if you are going to invest in digital infrastructure, do it off the shelf at first. Get the objectives set out, get your plan and your project plan in place, get it fully costed end to end, and then look at actually whether it's worth doing. And if there's things that you need to cut out of it or put into it to really deliver what you want in terms of you meeting your objectives, then you need to take that into account at that point. I'd say at least a third of the work of any digital infrastructure project goes in before you've coded anything. You do your plan, you do your website layouts, you do your wireframes, you do your user journeys, you do your key phrase research, you do all of these things before you even tap a key. And there's no end of people out there that don't do this. They don't operate that way, and they really should. And I think my warning to anybody out there who's looking to invest in digital infrastructure is, if your potential business partner in this area doesn't do this stuff and doesn't work this way, seriously think about changing partner. Because if you don't do the preparation, if you don't do this stuff before the coding has started, you're going to get mission creep. And Chris, you're under, I can see you've been there with this, with your clients. They will come and tell you, as my clients have as well, that if you get mission creep in web builds especially, you can double, triple, quadruple the size of the project. I had one client years ago who invested 2.2 million in an autonomy website. And the only reason they invested 2.2 million was because their project manager had a special relationship with their developer. and they just kept it going on and on and on and on, and it was being farmed. And this sort of thing, I see it all the time. So my warning to people is, do your project plan, do your budget, stick to your budget, make sure that your developer and your business partner knows that you've got to stick to your budget, and make sure that you can actually deliver what you want within that budget. If you've got a good developer or a good agency or a good partner, they will turn around to you and say, what you want is not deliverable within that budget. You need to take down your specification, shrink it down a bit, and then look at developing what you're trying to get over a period of months, years, quarters, which budgetary periods, whichever way you want to play that game. And I think for me, that is the single biggest mistake that most people make when they go into web development and when they get involved in digital infrastructure. They don't treat it like they're building a building, and they really should, because it is that crucial to their business, and it has that much potential to go that wrong, to the tune of 2.2 million.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The two words that I got out of what you said there, if I was to sum it up, would be honesty and integrity. So as a developer and a designer or an agency, act with honesty and integrity so that your clients get the proper quality service that they deserve.
Absolutely.
Very, very interesting what you said about sort of off the shelf first and then custom built second. I completely agree with that. If there's a tool that will do the job, why would you spend days, weeks, months developing something else and reinventing the wheel? I don't go and design a new car. I go to the garage and I buy one from there that Ford have designed for me. There's no point in me trying to design and build a car. It's a complete waste of time. But you see it with all forms of technology in IT, not just sort of web infrastructure or digital infrastructure, but any form of IT at all. People will custom build something when they could have spent a fraction of the money on something that did the job perfectly. And it's just pointless. I mean, have you seen that sort of thing as well, Chris?
Absolutely, all the time. And I'm totally with you. For me, the other thing I see a lot is where people, we deal with quite a lot of businesses who are probably sort of 2-3 years old, so they're going through that kind of second ramp up, and they'll talk to people about what they want, and they'll go, right, what you need is this, and they will come up with this massive spec, and I always say to people, well, what are you going to use? What is it? Coming back to your plan, which we've kind of talked about this a lot between. Coming back to your plan, what is it? What are the problems? If you've got questions as to, it could be this or this, leave it out, but build the site so that can be built onto it at a later date. If you haven't got that information, and then what will happen is you'll start to say, right, the site's working really well, but I wish it could do this. And actually, if we could integrate it into this sales system, that'd save us X. And you've got a problem that you can solve rather than just ticks going down a shiny thing. And this idea of building everything bespoke, yes, you've got to be careful of things like code bloat. You've got, coming back to your site speed, you've got to make sure that, using a framework, that framework is optimized well, and you're only using the parts of it that you need to use. But in terms of custom, unless something needs customizing, why do it? The whole coming back to your car analogy, if you're going into track racing or extreme off-roading, then you're probably going to need to going to put some custom suspension on and some uprated brakes and stuff like that.
But if you just go into the shop,
but it's and again, a lot of it is because and unfortunately I see a lot of this with agencies. They've got a developer that they need to pay, and they've got a huge staff bill with that team, and it's a case of, right, well, actually, if we can keep attributing time to this, we can keep paying them. So that's my thoughts on it anyway.
I think looking at that, what you're saying is be aware of the agency that's just looking to keep you on the books and charge you as much as possible versus the agency that is obviously is there to make a profit, but also to deliver you a product or a service that is superb and will do what you want it to do.
I'm quite. Sorry, go on, Ben.
No, I was just going to add. I think that in 2020, I think there are deep problems with the agency business model. I don't think it works anymore. For digital technology deployment, the overheads that you pay for tea and biscuits and keeping the lights on, they don't provide value to you, and they are so high in the agency's cost base that I think there's serious problems with, especially digital development agencies. They have been and continue to be some of the worst offenders in terms of farming of my clients that I've ever seen, and they are still that way to this day. I recently outcompeted an agency for a build. I think it was by a factor of 5. Their price point came in 5 times what me and my partners provided, and I just couldn't believe it. I looked at this and said, why are they charging for this? Why are they charging for that? And a lot of it was what I call tea and biscuits. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all right. I mean, very, very much along the same lines. I mean, a tip for when you're using somebody, be it SEO developer, is if they're talking about when they're going to start and when they're going to finish, you're along the right lines. I mean, I always try and make myself redundant with my customers. It doesn't happen because what I do is I meet that target, I meet that goal, and then they go, right, let's go after this market now, or let's go after this. But if you're in your project plan saying, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to measure, this is when it's finished, then if you can, anybody who says, oh, it's you just have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, it's wrong. There are so many measurables now with pretty much anything that you can tell when it's there. We don't just measure the end result, we measure things that are seemingly unrelated, but I know if that's happening now, this is going to happen in 2 months, and if this happens in 2 months, this is going to happen in 6. And so I can tell quite accurately now where they're going to get to and when my job is done. And that means that I'm not having to pay my fee for updating meta tags. Why would anyone do that? But at the same time, and what we found is that by having this kind of almost self-redundancy model, is that it makes it very hard for agencies to compete with my clients, because I'm teaching them in-house. So they've usually got a junior or mid-level doing the day-to-day stuff. I'm focusing on the strategy, and for the same investment, they're getting sort of 80% more activity each month on their site. So in order for their competitors to regain the territory that we've taken, they'd have to virtually double their investment to do the same. So like you, I'm a big believer in you that the agency model, that traditional agency model, is, it's flawed, in many ways.
Absolutely. Because if they've got lots of employed staff sat in an office that costs thousands of pounds a month, they've got to pay for that somehow. And that's,
I know, I've run one. So,
that's what Stefan, my boss, is always talking about with his agency, Sigma Digital. Is about 2.5 years ago, it went virtual. And his joke is that he closed the office and the staff didn't even notice. Because they'd started working remotely anyway. And then he just stopped using the office one day. And it's to use freelancers, I guess, is probably the better option. So you can bring in a developer for a project when you need them and say, right, well, we're going to pay you that for that project, rather than having somebody on payroll that you've got to find a monthly salary for every month, and be a bit more flexible with your agency than some of the big ones are.
Yeah, I mean, if your books mean that member of staff is full all the time, it's still great to have. The building costs a lot of money, and I think it's as well for me. Now I have a little bit like Ben. I have a plethora of people who I can draw down on. So if I need content for a technical project, I know somebody who knows all about engineering and technical stuff, and he has a pocket protector with his pens. And if there's somebody who's a lifestyle project, I've got somebody who's an expert in lifestyle, and so on and so forth. And I think that's whether they are employed or whether those are freelance. I think actually having people with those experience that you can sort of draw down on yourself is invaluable.
Yeah, that's really important, because obviously, as clever as any of us are, we can't know everything about everything with the best will in the world. So having the people that are experts in various different things, and as you highlight there, very different types of copywriting. If you're writing for a technical, engineering, scientific type of website, it'd be very different to, say, a yoga school, for example. That's brilliant. Right. You go on, Ben. One last thing.
I was just going to add that point in terms of providing expertise that's outside of your own organization. Everybody should adopt that, because if you're talking SEO, if you're talking content, if you're talking driving traffic to your website, if you get guest blogging talking about expert topics on your website that are nothing to do with what your core competencies are, that only adds to the traffic that you're getting, that only adds to the appeal that you've got. And it's absolutely, I think, as a business philosophy, it's something that everybody should practice.
Fantastic. Right then, gents, thank you very much. We'll just finish the show now by both of you in turn just telling us who you are, what your business is, and how viewers can get in touch with you. So, Chris, do you want to just give us a quick synopsis of you, your business, and how we can get in touch?
Yeah, so as I said before, we focus primarily on organic search and voice search. If you want to get in touch with us, you can go to www.treefrogdigital.co.uk, or we also have a podcast, which is the No BS SEO show, which again just gives sort of weekly tips about stuff, the industry, and what people should be listening out for.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. And Ben, if you could just give us an overview of you, your business, and how we can get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ben Timberley. You can find me on blackbookconsulting.co.uk, or one word. Best way to get in touch with me is directly on LinkedIn. You can find me, Ben Timberley. Just search my name. I'm the only one on there, thankfully. Other than that, in terms of what I do for my business, I consult on sales and marketing and digital infrastructure. So whether it's websites, e-commerce systems, CRMs, ERPs, MRPs, I help people pull all of these things together and build a holistic business system that works. Some people refer to me as a business architect. Some people refer to me as an outsourced commercial director. I do all of the above.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you very much to everybody for watching the show today. Remember, if you've enjoyed it, if you've got something from it, all we ask you to do is pay it forward. So share it with a friend, send them the link. We would love that. We're back tomorrow with Team Thursday, and Stefan has got 2 fantastic guests for you on that show. So thank you very much, and we will catch you tomorrow.